Welcome to part 2 of choosing a build type. Now we're going to start working with some processor directives. Now if we go back to our project and our project properties down here at the bottom, you will notice that I am going to go to debug and we have the define debug constant. All right, so I'm going to go into my code now. And I'm going to go ahead and change this up here so I don't forget it. But I'm going to go into my code and set up another message box. All right, and I'm going to say pound if debug. Then I'm going to put another message box, and I'll just copy this one, and then I'll drop it right here, and I'll come down here and I'll put an end if. Okay, just like that. Now what's going to happen here is if debug has been defined, and we know it's been defined because if we go in our in our project properties is how we got here. If we click that, it'll take us right here. We're in debug and the debug constant has been defined. All right, so if that has been defined, this will run. But notice if it has not been defined, and if I put the exclamation point in front, this got grayed out, and that's telling me that the compiler is not going to compile that and it's not going to run in my code. So if not debug, I click start and I execute this, you're going to notice that click event has been called, and that's all that happens. That's because I was in debug mode. Okay, now let's go back out here and notice that if I am in release mode, debug has not been defined. That would change that logic. But let's go back and undo this, okay? So I'm going to take off the not sign, okay? And in debug mode, let's go back out here and notice if I am in debug mode, debug has been defined and it will run this time. All right, don't let me confuse you with all these settings. Just go back and forth through it. So I click this, I get that my click event has been called, and this time the click event has been called, and I can make that a little easier for us by saying debug has been called. So let's do that right quick so that we can see it. We get click event and we get debug. Okay, now if I go back out to my project properties and I look in debug and I turn debug off, then that is the same as disabling all this. And notice this is not going to show now. So now when I run this, debug will not be called because I turned off the debug directive here. Okay, let me go look at this. Notice debug was turned off. If I turn it back on, that makes these go live. Okay, now let me show you one more before I leave here, and that is I can define my own. I can define them in a couple of ways. I can come right up here to the very top and put asterisk or the C# sign or the pound sign, and I can put define, and I'll put mark. All right, and that's defining a conditional processing symbol. And then I will come down here and we're going to do some more smoke and mirrors here. I'm going to take this message box, I'm going to copy it, going to put it right here, and I'm going to put mark has been called. And this time I'm going to put a different directive here. I'm going to put if mark, then we will include this one. All right, and then I will do my end if. Okay, now notice mark has been defined. Now I can put the not symbol on that and prevent that from being compiled and being run, or if I remove my define up here, and I can do this by just commenting it out, you'll notice it grays out here and it's not going to run. All right, now I'm not going to run that for you, but I am going to do one more thing. Notice I can take define off here and it grays. I can go out into my project properties and I can put mark there, and you'll notice it's back. Okay, and if I run this, then I can click this and I'll get my click event. Debug was called because debug is still defined, and mark has been called because mark has been defined. Now I can go back to my build type example and go to my beta mode, and notice mark's not there, neither is debug. And so if I change my compile method here to beta, and then start, you're going to notice I'm going to get my click event, but neither of the other two. Okay, so I hope this helps you understand. You can put these compiler directives all over the place and do conditional compiling. You can mark things as test, as beta, as debugging, as whatever you want to do. And you can put all kind of conditions in your code about when it's compiled and when it's used. You can put ifs, else ifs, and so forth to determine connection strings are used at different phases of the project and so forth. There is this project out there called the build type example. You'll see it in your work files folder. You can download it and play with it. But get comfortable with this because you will see something about build types on the exam. A lot of things you can set, but especially these processor directives. And again, let me just say it one more time. You want to use these things with care because you can make your code very difficult to read and to troubleshoot later on with too many of these things. So anyway, that's a quick look at build types and compiler directives. I hope that's helped.